Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number S773D. This is adhesive-backed fire smoke, triple fin gasketing, and a dark brown color. This happens to be a 25-foot roll. It's available in lots of different roll lengths. Of course, typical sizes that you would see for a standard door. 25-foot would be very appropriate for well, it'd be appropriate for a pair of 6080 doors, where you'd have 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 6 would be 22. If you had a pair of 8080 doors, 8 plus 8 plus 8 would be 24, it'd be appropriate. A typical 3070 door or a 3080 door, a single door, wouldn't require such a long roll. But when you get into pairs of doors, or you just simply need to have, for instance, you might have an opening where you want to add, something additional, maybe an additional piece, you might opt for a longer roll length. But this is what the S773 looks like. This is the D color, which is a dark brown color. And to my eyes, and in this light, it is certainly their D color. It is under the right lighting conditions, it will appear to be brown ever so slightly. But they do have other colors such as black, and I believe gray as well. And I'm going to pull that information up right now so we can take a closer look at it in terms of the other colors. S773, you're going to be able to do that in the BL for black, D for the dark brown or dark bronze color. This will be more compatible with a dark bronze type of color. You'll also be able to do it in the GR finish, which would be gray, along with a white finish. And those four colors are what is available. Back to the roll sizes: 17 foot, 18 foot, 20 foot, 21 foot, 25 foot, 30 foot. Then you get into your 250-foot length and 500-foot length rolls. If you're doing several doors, you'll want to order it in the longer roll lengths, as there would be a marginal advantage in terms of the cost per foot. But if you're doing just a couple of single doors, you'll just order them in their individual rolls. A triple fin sort of option is really nice because it's going to give you, of course, a lot of surface area. And the S773 is going to be a material that's possibly going to be used because your building code is mandating smoke rated openings, which this material complies with. Fire rated gasketing, this material complies with. It's also sound tested. It's Green Guard certified. That's something you can search online. It is approved by Intertech, as the laboratory who has given this a smoke and fire rating. This is also certified by BHMA, the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association. Now let's get into the balance of the information in the extended description. This is a silicone type material in a dark brown or dark bronze type color. The seal begins compressing at 3/8 of an inch and will compress down to 1/16, meaning in its natural state, it's going to be allowing you to close up a gap that's quite large, 3/8 of an inch. Well, that would actually be far larger than a typical fire-rated opening would permit, because depending on the door construction, wood, it'd be 1/8 of an inch margin, max. Metal doors can be 3/16 of an inch maximum. If you've got 3/8 of an inch, you don't technically have a fire-rated door. But the good news is that it will compress down to fit within the gap of your fire-rated openings. I can just pinch my fingers and it will close down. It's very supple, this material. It's soft, but being silicone, it will also be very durable as well. This is self-adhesive, and silicone is excellent for its high temperature characteristics, that it will install and operate between well below zero, 58 below zero, and 450 degrees Fahrenheit as well. And the bottom line on silicone, its extreme temperature rating is not going to be necessarily something that you're going to encounter in a standard application. But in fact, silicone is very advantageous in applications where it can become extremely hot. I like to, and I've done a breakdown of the different inserts, and while I've not I don't possess a scientific knowledge of your silicones, your neoprenes, your vinyls, your polyurethanes, etc. I like to refer people to silicone when you require flexibility in extreme temperatures. 450 degrees, well, okay, that's going to be the point of combustion on everything, basically. You'll be approaching a flashover point. At that point, water boiling at 212 degree Fahrenheit. The bottom line is, if you have a rooftop door in a southern or tropical elevation, or equatorial elevation, and it could be a manufacturing facility, and you have nothing on the roof except access to HVAC units, that door is going to bake in the sun, and you will get extremely hot temperatures, like fry an egg on type temperatures. I do encourage people to use silicone because you are dealing with a range of temperature in the extreme that neoprene's not known to be favorable in, is the bottom line. So be mindful of silicone and its place, and they list its extreme temperature capability because that's its hallmark, as I personally define it. Triple thin is, again, really nice because it gives you lots of surface area. Going to give you lots of coverage. It's going to be very appropriate to effectively block out light and sound from infiltrating a room, and it is sound tested. A lot of people will say, hey, what can I do to deaden the sound from my neighbors? I live in a condo building. Well, there's things you can do, and then there's STC rated material that's made to do that and has been tested to accomplish it. The problem with the latter is the frame, the door, the wall construction, and all of the accessory hardware all go together to be tested. So because you don't have that in a condo scenario, what can you do? Put on what you can do. And the S773 is what you can do, meaning it's been tested for sound infiltration, and it's super easy to install with this self-adhesive backing that's here. Very durable adhesive, that's here. Incredibly durable, okay? If I continue to shake, it will of course come off, but the fact of the matter is it's quite dogged in its resistance to coming off. A proper installation will see this material last basically the lifetime of the installation. Okay, so below this video are a number of links. Product brochure, let's look at that first. That's going to be a summary of what we've just discussed, and it will show other common adhesive gaskets. And I can tell you from that page, the most common one by far is the S88. That design, I believe, was the first type of design, the teardrop shape. And you're going to see that installed where smoke, draft, and fire control is required by building code. You're going to see that material used. The S773 is fairly common, as is the S44. That S442, its batwing design, not uncommon, not unheard of. I would personally consider using that. One installation of that is going to be it's going to prove to be more of a trick because you've got to get it adhered to two surfaces simultaneously. The S776 and the S771x6, you're going to see those when you have acoustically rated openings. That material will be used. I would personally suggest it, certainly for an astragal application, provided you've got the gap, which you would because it's a 1/16 of an inch. But I would encourage that because you've got 6 fins that are different lengths to account for beveled doors. Okay, so the distance between the two doors on the push side will be greater than the distance between the two doors on the pull side. And you put those longer fins on the egress side of the opening, and you're going to do a good job at closing that up real well. The PK33 is nice in relationship to the S88 because it is a smaller footprint. That material will compress down a little bit better. It's already a bit smaller than the S88, so if you have a tighter margin to begin with, I would order that. The PK55, similar in terms of its application. The micro shield stuff we don't get into selling often. You're going to see micro shield in hospital applications where you are micro shielding or having a coating applied to all of the hardware that we come in contact with. And much of this material is available as ligature resistant material, meaning it is designed to pull apart with a small amount of force so that there's no possible usage to use it in such a way to harm, so that someone can harm themselves. Ligature resistant. Now, the cut sheet, the next link that's there as well, nothing new there, dimensional drawing. The one dimension I didn't give you was the 1/2 inch width. Let's take a look at that right here. A little bit shy on that, as you can see, but nonetheless, about 1/2 inch. Okay. Link after that, we're going to be looking at the template. That is just a technical drawing, nothing important there. Installation instructions and applications. Let's look at applications first. That's going to go hand in hand with your installation instructions. Take note on the unit where you are to apply the material in relationship to the hinge jamb, the strike jamb, and the header. It doesn't go in the same place on all surfaces. If you're doing a hinge jamb, generally you're going to see that material installed on the face of the stop, as it's shown on the left side. That's generally where I'll see that material. But when you're dealing with the header or the strike jamb, you'll exclusively see the material installed on the rabbet. This requirement this outline is showing you can install it on the face of the stop or on the rabbet itself. I would prefer that the door was not working in such a way so as to pull the material down. I would rather have the door just compress the material, forcing it to lay flat, rather than approaching it from this type of application, giving it over time the ability to pull that off. I would rather have the door do nothing other than just come, press it, and lay flat, is what I would be seeking to do when possible. And you'd certainly do that on the hinge side. It's not necessarily different on the header or on the strike side when you apply it to the face of the stop. You're just pushing down on it. Now, the installation instructions. Those are very important to not only read, but read before you start. Because the first time I put material on like this, it was a fail. I learned that first time how important the installation instructions are to a successful installation. Now, looking at this material, your S773 is adhesive backed and is a high temperature, low temperature product made of silicone, self-extinguishing and non-toxic, longest lasting commercial grade door seal. Silicone is. Polyurethane probably would be better though. Seals against smoke, fire, air, sound, and weather. You can use this where you are mandated by code. You can use it on the other end of the spectrum when you just want to help close off the light coming in. I will very often sell this to material just to augment an installation. We've got proper gasketing, and in fact, this client, the front door of the country club, that's all their gasketing. Their sweeps, their threshold, their perimeter gasketing. But here in southern Florida, you can just put your hand on the outside of the door and feel the cold air leak out. So I've advised the client to run this up along his rabbet and his stop face. He's got a double door, so it's going to be the stop face on the two hinge jambs, and then it's going to be the face of the stop on his header. And that's going to really help, just helping, giving you additional line of defense. Unaffected by sunlight, real big here down in southern Florida, ozone and ultraviolet. UV is just really going to serve to kill this material, and we don't want that to happen at all. And what we're driving at there is that vinyl is the worst possible option, because ultraviolet will absolutely defeat that in just a short amount of time. It seems like the material dries out and cracks. I don't understand the process by which exposure to ultraviolet sunlight does that, but vinyl is going to fail soon with exposure to ultraviolet. So you'll want to avoid that, is the bottom line. If you have an interior application, it's never going to get sun. Silicone, vinyl. Well, it turns out they don't make this in vinyl, in anything but silicone. But word to the wise, if you're using it in an exterior application, veer away from vinyl, because it will not survive at all. Because also what you learn, just to finish that off, is if there's daylight, there's ultraviolet. You don't have to have direct sun to have ultraviolet. It can be perfectly cloudy and there's still ultraviolet, so be mindful of that. Impervious to fungus and mildew. That's very advantageous for those applications where you might be installing it in a food processing plant application, pharmaceutical plant application, places that are routinely washed and scrubbed down after a shift, after a mandated amount of time has elapsed and there's going to be a tear down like you would have in those types of applications. And excellent compression. Door latches easily. That's advantageous because you're not going to see this material behave in such a way so as to prevent the code required compliant operation of a door. Meaning, if you have a fire rated door, you've got 3 rules. The 2 big ones everyone's heard of. You have to be self-closing, you have to be self-latching, and you have to be free swinging. The self-latching is where this comes in. It's not going to put up much of a fight to your door closer that's already installed. And in fact, you probably won't even know that it's there. Now, page 2 of the installation instructions is where this really comes into play. Shelf life, don't order this material. It's only got a 6-month shelf life. Don't order it before you need it. Install it, well, order it with lead time, but don't let it sit on the shelf for an excessive amount of time. Between 50 and 100 degree Fahrenheit to store. Now, moving through the installation instructions, you're going to see that right after the shelf life, thoroughly clean the frame with the enclosed cleansing towelette to remove grease, dust, or cleanser buildup. Before installation, wait for the frame surface to completely dry, evaporate. Some hospital environments have wax or antibacterial cleanser buildup. As an alternative or substitute cleaner, use isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Mineral spirits or other petroleum-based cleaning products should not be used. You don't want to use that material and strip off your finish. Rubbing alcohol. So when they are saying thoroughly clean the frame, that's where my initial failure happened. I cleaned the frame, and I cleaned it good. Turns out not good enough. You need to thoroughly clean the frame. It's so crucial that you do so that they include a wipe for you to do so. When you think you've got it clean, go back and do it a second time, and you got to be sure that when you run your hand down it, you clean after touching it, but there's no particulate on your finger at all. If there's any particulate in there, it's going to get between the adhesive and the surface, and it's not going to adhere properly. You'll do the installation, and you'll come back to see failure. It will become detached. It cannot be overstated in terms of the importance of cleaning that frame utterly thoroughly. If the frame has been recently painted or stained, it must be cured at least a week after it's been done. Apply the material not below 50 degree Fahrenheit, certainly not above 100 degree, as the adhesion is not going to work. Now, when to install the material, literally, this material goes on at the end, the very final thing you're doing. Everything's done. The floor is in, the final cleaning's been done. Then let the cleaning crew clean the frames, right? Paint will be completely dried, cured by that point as well. And it does say paint must be cured for at least 5 to 7 days prior to installation. You can't have... Paint has to be cured because underneath the surface, if you were to take and scratch the frame, you might find it still tacky or even wet underneath. You have to be cured. With construction these days, the paint gets slapped on quick. You've got to be cured. Avoid quick-dry primers, which will leave a powdery surface, preventing sufficient adhesion. When applying to a wood frame, the surface must be non-porous and sealed, and follow the industry standard guidelines on sealed wood frames and or a rough surface before applying. Antibacterial, antifungal, or silicone additives in paint may inhibit adhesion. Be mindful of that. What they'll say is even rough up the frame a little bit to give yourself some greater surface area to put the material down to. Application. So we talked about where you will install the material already. Measure. The code says that you have to have a continuous run on your frame. That doesn't mean that you continuously run it on the inside corners. The interpretation of the code really means measure the lengths required, cut them. There must be complete coverage. You can't have a void between the material. It doesn't mean that it's a continuous run. There can be a cut there so that the material butts together properly so that you have a continuous seal. You're going to measure and cut. Don't stretch. The purpose of measuring and cutting is so that when you get the piece applied, if you've got any left over, a little hanging off, you've stretched the material. You need to immediately mitigate that. That material is going to resume its natural elasticity and pull back and break the adhesive off. So be mindful. You're going to measure twice, cut. If you've got any left over, then you've got something that you've got to fix immediately. Use very firm perpendicular pressure when applying. Use wallpaper seam roller to reinforce adhesion after applying. I wouldn't use personally a seam roller myself. I prefer that after I get the material measured, cut, applied, just pressure pushing down. No rolling. Don't use your thumb and pull it like this. When you're applying the material, they're going to say somewhere in here, they do, remove approximately 24 inches of backing. I like to work with a shorter length because when I'm working with a longer length, I have not only the possibility of bumping the material onto the frame, but I don't want to pull it taut. I find that using a shorter length, and because this is straight, you're going to see real easily if you're going down straight, and plus the frame's got nothing but straight lines on it, so it'll be easy to apply the material. Peel that off, continue to put it on straight, as much perpendicular pressure as possible. Don't roll it, don't stretch it. Do not stretch the material. Double check the adhesion after 2 or 3 hours, but before leaving the job site. If the gasket separates from the frame, press again with firm pressure in place. If the adhesive strip is exposed, airborne dust may impede adhesion, and therefore replacement may be necessary. Here's what you need to do. Clean the frame. Lots of perpendicular pressure. If you've got both of those, you're going to be in complete success. But it is a tedious task to put this material on. Application at the header can be awkward due to the overhead condition. Be sure that you are approaching the material without straining yourself so that you're not doing a substandard job at installation. The adhesion takes a delayed set. Immediate removal and resetting can be done if the error occurs in the initial placement. Do not reset after 1 hour. Full set is achieved after 24 hours. Pre-cut the material. Work with your length. Don't let the adhesive touch anything. Leave it exposed to the air for the smallest amount of time as possible. Position the adhesive gasketing as illustrated previously. The use of a hand roller is highly recommended. I guess what they're saying is after you've got it put on and there's no chance of it moving at all, that adhesive's probably going to prevent you from moving the material with a roller. I might test that before I went widespread. I might make sure nothing moves before I did that. I've never used a roller and can understand why they would say, but I'm suspicious without the experience myself of having done it. Once installed, apply firm pressure along the entire surface for proper adhesion. And that's the bottom line. If this material is going onto a draft, smoke, or fire-rated door, it's important to get the installation correct, because if any one item in that fire-rated assembly is below requirements, you technically don't have a fire-rated door. This material will include its own label for you to apply to the frame so that there's no question to the inspector, because this is a listed and labeled product, that you are indeed installing the material in compliance with the requirements of the opening. Okay. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Your packaging has your label and your towelette, and the installation instructions are on the back of the cardboard or the paper that's in here. Any questions on the S773D, triple fin gasket, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.